My name's Cornish, and I was born in a back-to-back house, 2 up and 1 down, namely number 2 Prospect Place at Robin Hood, but that property's been demolished now for a few years. And I was born on 9th of February 1931. And later on in years we moved higher up street into another one, 2 up and 2 down, another terrace house. They're all rented, of course. My dad, I can't remember really, but I think he worked at Robin Hood Pit in his younger days, and then probably moved over to coke ovens. My mother worked in Bandwalk up at Ardsley Falls, same as her sisters, they all worked there. But brothers worked at Pitt. My Uncle Joe was oldest, and then my Uncle Tom, I think. And then there was one called Henry that was partially blind. He had pneumonia when he was 3 weeks old. Him like that, with his eyes almost closed. He could hardly see. In fact, he was registered blind. So my Uncle George always took on to look after him. He promised my granny that he'd look after Henry, and that's what he did. And then we took on to look after him if anything happened. And Henry was left on his own. I've got 2 sisters. Well, I had 2 sisters. One of them's passed on now. My youngest sister lives at Barnsley. My sister Margaret passed away with brain tumour. My first school was Robin Hood Infant School, and I left school at 14. Easter when I was 14, and started work at 19 shilling a week wage I got. I worked all week for 19 shilling. I won a scholarship, but Rodillian there were a lot of scholarship passes that year. Oh. And Rodillian were overbooked, if you like. They offered me a place at Normanton Grammar School, which meant I'd have had to leave home probably about 7:30 in the morning. It might have been 5:30, 6 o'clock when I got home at night. But my dad was only £6 a week wage, so there'd no money to do out with. I couldn't buy any uniforms or out. So I declined, I didn't go. Well, I went all over when I left school to try and get a job, because I always wanted to be. In them days, they were all joiners and undertakers. There were no such as funeral directors out like that. Now it's all changed. But I couldn't get a job anywhere. And I finished up going to Labour Exchange. And they sent me up to a bloke who wanted a young lad as apprentice bricklayer, and I went up there and got a job with him. We only had a bike and handcart, and he used to push handcart all over Robin Hood, Left House, Carlton, Roughwell, all its surrounding areas. And I worked with him for about 12 months or so. He got a job on Featherstone Council as a clerk of works. So it left me, he wouldn't sack me. He left me, he had to join a shop belonging to a pub that he had, which were namely Elephant and Castle at Loft House. And some outbuildings were stables. And Loft up above stables would have joined the shop as they had it. And I was up there making toys throughout the week. I used to make toys. And then he would auctioneer them off at Saturday night in pub to get me wage, which I said previously were only £1 a week. And then I got a job at Belleville Colliery. My Uncle Martin got me a job. He was manager there, or manager at Fanny Pit at Rothwell. And Belleville come under his wing, if you like. He was manager of that as well. He got me a job as apprentice electrician. I worked there about 12 months, which I didn't dislike. Were all right, but meanwhile, Harry Bennett, who was a builder I worked for previously, his son come out to army on Class B, which was, being a tradesman, they let him out early to come to do bomb repairs during war, not bomb damage. And I come, he advertised he wanted an apprentice, so I left Coalboard, if you like, and went back to work with him. And I worked with him about 6 years, 7 years, and then I left there. I went to work for another bloke at Robin Hood, a builder who was building council houses at Crofton. I went to work for him to get experience on some new work, because I've been brought up on repairs and alterations. Well, when I was younger, there was a bloke lived a few doors away from my mother. He played in Carlton Temperance Band, and me and another lad out the street, we all call it street, but it was Pawson Street, Robin Hood. I went and joined the band one Sunday morning with him, and I finished up with an instrument, soprano cornet, the only instrument they had spare. And I learnt to play that. The other lot packed it in. I didn't persevere with it, but I stuck it out. And eventually I got a trumpet, bought a trumpet from Kitchens, which was £20. A lot of money then. I got on with this bloke from East Ardsley who were playing piano in one or two pubs on a weekend, and he started taking me with him. Then he finished up. He got a drummer and a bloke with a piano accordion. We finished up being a 4-piece band. We were playing 6 nights a week in Bull's Head at Ardsley, which were on Bradford Road. So that's not there anymore. And then we moved down to 66 at Wakefield. We were playing down there. I had a motorbike. I got a motorbike. Because I was earning more money playing in band than what I was working through day. There were these, like a gang or so. There were 2 girls and 2 or 3 boys. They used to come to 66 from Crofton at Wakefield. And I don't know how it come about really, but I got a bit friendly with one of them, one called Jane. And I finished up, we got married, didn't finish. We got married at Wakefield Registry Office. And then we had his first youngster, who we christened her Joy. She was an 8-month baby. No fingernails or toenails on. She was just an 8-monther. But in the meantime, I'd left that builder that I worked for in council houses at Crofton, and I was working as a bricklayer down Lofthouse, Colliery, where I worked 10 years, 1950 to 1960. And I had only £8 a week wage, basic wage, when I got married. So we never had a great deal of money. But it went a bit farther than what it would today. I used to take Jean home on a night when I finished playing at 66. I used to run around back to Crofton on back a motorbike till, as I say, we got married and went to live with mother-in-law, and I had to pedal on a bike and had no money for no transport, so I pedalled a bike from Crofton to Lofthouse Colliery. I started there at 5 o'clock in the morning, so I used to leave Crofton about 4:15. Then eventually I got told about an house that would come empty, breaking into Lofthouse. I'm more or less on border between Lofthouse and Robin Hood. So I got on my motorbike one day. I knew of the people who owned it, who owned the property. And I went up, I think it was King Lane somewhere at the other side of Leeds, see if I could get that house that was empty. Which I was lucky I did, one up, one down, back to back. But I got that, they let me have that. I promised to do the repairs, which I've been doing. When I worked at Bennett's, I used to do their repairs. And I promised to do their repairs for them, a bit cheaper than Bennett's. And I think that's how I got it. But we moved in there. I'm not sure whether we lived there 7 years or 14. I don't know. Yeah, we had that back-to-back, one up, one down, were well close to us, which were owned by Keithley family, as I said earlier, in Leeds. And then we got another child, which turned out to be a boy. And then later on, we must have lived there 14 years, because the 14-year difference between Joy, oldest, and Jill, youngest. The 14-year difference. And we've still been in a one up, one down. We had to get another house. And my mother come down one Saturday morning, and she said that my Auntie Bennett, who was my mother's sister, had found her husband, my Uncle Martin. She found him dead in bed outside of her at Saturday morning when she woke up. She'd had a bit of a rough night with him, apparently. And then a few weeks later on, she went to live with one of her daughters. She had 2 daughters. One was in Land Army and one was at home. I went to live with her as a temporary measure. Then my mother came down a few weeks later and said, "I've heard your Auntie May's going to give the house up." I says, "Oh, is she?" He said, "Yeah." Which was the top house in Pawson Street. And the Monday morning, I got on my motorbike and I went up to Marley, to Parson's Quarries, to see George, who was office manager. And he used to collect rents for old David at Pawson. And I said, I knew George quite well. We used to go to Oxford Speedway together. Me and Jane and him and his lady friend. Can't remember her name. We used to go to Speedway and we had a decent night out Saturday night. So I went to see him. I said, "I've heard the Auntie May's going to get house up, George." I said, "Can I buy it?" He said, "I don't see why not." Which would be on a private mortgage sort of thing. But I didn't want any money cash, owing to having to pay tax and stuff. So he organised it for me to buy a house. He says, "I'll tell him to give you a key then, when they want that key in." So that's what I did, and I finished up buying a house, and it took me 3 years to do it up. I put a bathroom in it, a new kitchen, everything, all new windows and doors. As I say, it took me 3 years to do it up. Eventually we moved into it, and we lived there for I don't know, it could have been about 7 years, which by then kids were growing up. And we had to get a 3-bedroom house. Got with 2 girls and a boy. There were some allotments up Pawson Street, and Pawson sold them on. So a bloke called Albert Ward bought them. He sold them on to Normanton for building. So we'd all to get off. And my mum and dad always had a few poultry. Not many, maybe, I don't know, 10 or 20, something, I don't know, but a few just for us own eggs. We always had us own eggs all through war. So we had to move off. And there was a piece of land up at top end of what were always known as Bright Eyes Row, which was opposite Gardener's Arms. It started and went up to where they built police house. And I went to Coal Board at Norton Hill officers to see estates manager, and I got that piece of land to rent, and we started to move the stuff up there from allotment. And I wanted to make a living out of poultry. My wife would always on about getting another house, and I used to say to her, if you get another house, it won't buy a business, but if you get start a business up, business will buy a house, but a house won't buy a business. So we started, and we got as many as 50 laying hens. So she was selling eggs and using money to live off, and I was still working at Loft House Pit till eventually I got fed up of working there. So I packed it in, I put my notice in and packed it in, and had a couple of weeks' work doing repairs and stuff, pointing and stuff. Had 2 weeks' work, so I started on my own in building trade. As many as 2,000 birds, but we used to get day old chicks and rear them up ourselves to point to lay. We didn't buy point to lay pullets in because we never had enough money. So, and then as I said, we got foul pest one morning. One day we were getting over 1,000 eggs, and within 3 days we finished up getting 4 eggs, which were a hell of a bang. So Silcoat, so we used to buy feed off. Their rep said, we'll carry on, and what survives it will come back into lay. So we took his advice, and all we did was pumping money into feeding. He was all right because we were selling us meal to feed with, but they never came back into anywhere near that sort of performance. So we had to pack it in. I got rid of them, we finished. I do believe there was a white bird, which were a kind of white leghorn type, hybrid of course, but I think they were called shavers, which they laid a big egg from, more or less from start. They didn't lay pullet eggs as we used to know when they first started laying. They didn't lay pullet egg for long before they started being a large egg, but which returned more money, obviously. But we got a bloke used to come and take all his old birds, and he come down with them being a leghorn type bird. They weren't what you might call meaty, not like a a Rodillian red, it looked like that. It were a table bird. We finished up, he gave us £1 apiece for him. That's all we got, £1 apiece for him. Then he outed them, took them out, but for a while then, before we went anything we were relying on building to live off. It was a hard struggle. We got a top house in Pawson Street, which was 2 up and 2 down, but we had to move. And I got to be friendly with estate agents at Outwood, Hudson Holmes, Ted Holmes and his wife Betty, and the semi-detached house come up for sale at Robin Hood. And with them being estate agents, they were well in with, very friendly with the estate agents that were selling this semi at Robin Hood. So I got Ted to go with me to look round it. There were another couple, another young lady there, young girl, looking round with the mother at the same time. And they were on about what they were going to do, what they weren't going to do. And I thought to myself, you're going to come unstuck here, love, because it's mine, it ain't yours. I'll pull in a few strings and we managed to handle it, so as I got it. I sold a house up we lived in Upsport, Pawson Street, for about 5,500 or something. And that house at Robin Hood was 7,000, but it wanted a bathroom put in upstairs. Bathroom was on end of kitchen, which I didn't like, so I put a new kitchen in and did away with bathroom, put a proper bathroom upstairs. I think we lived there about 7 years. I borrowed £3,500 from Woolwich Building Society, got a mortgage for to give me some money to do it up with. We got a chance to buy that land up at Bright Eyes. They were wanting to get rid of Corboard, or wanted to started selling bits of land at the edge that were not much use to them. So they come to look round it one day, told us how much they'd take for it. So we finished up, said, right, it's ours. We started doing a bit of floristry as well. We were doing flowers for 7 funeral directors. And I was killing myself. I got a job in wholesale market, 5 o'clock in the morning. Sometimes I could get home, except Thursday and Friday. But worst 2 days were, used to be dinner time-ish before I got home. And then we were working till 10:30 at night. I went to deliver flowers round that we'd made for next day's funerals. So it was taking a toll on me. And I wanted something else. My son came up with a funeral business at Bridlington. But there was a nursery at outskirts of Brid that we were going to buy. We got the contract to sign for that. But I didn't sign it because my son came up with this funeral business in Brid, which was a big house. And I came home from market one day, on Friday, dinner time. And I used to lay out settee for about 3/4 of an hour. And it worked wonders, did that. There were a lot come to the door. So I went to the door, this old gypsy woman at the door, wanting to sell Lucky Charms. I said, I've no money. She says, you have, she says. I got a couple of Lucky Charms off her. And she told me, she said, you're moving from here. But this was before funeral business came up for sale. She said, you're moving from here, you're going to live in a big house. This was a couple of months or so, maybe before we did. So anything developed. I'll never know how she knew that. But she did. She told me that we were going to move into a big house, and we did. We moved to Brid. And we all lived together, my son and his wife. And they had children again. We helped to bring them up more or less, because they used to come upstairs to a flat we lived in on a night. And the grandma used to learn them, to go schooling with them. Obviously, I sold that land at Loft House and sold my semi-detached at Robin Hood to help us to buy that at Brid. But we couldn't get sufficient funerals to survive. A bit of a close shop. So that fell through eventually. But in the meantime, my mum and dad died, both that same day. So we came back, me and my wife came back to Robin Hood. We lived in the house that they had. Bloke who used to collect rents for Pawson, David Pawson, or an estate agent at Wakefield, out Charlie Sunderland. And I got doing bits of work for him in building for other property owners. And I got onto him, there was 6 houses left in Pawson Street that were tenanted, all out tenants in them. And I got onto him about buying them all. Anyway, one woman, next door but one to my mother, she died, Mrs. Allinson died. And that threw her house empty, it was vacant then. That got sold off for twice price. I found out afterwards. But it left 5 for sale. So I agreed to buy all 5 off him. But as I say, I didn't really want cash on to tax. I didn't want money all at once. One of them, it had a woman lived in it on her own. And shortly after I bought them, she moved out. I went to live down Rothwell somewhere, and it all seemed to fall into place. She moved out, and I sold that for money I wanted to buy all 5. So I used that money and paid Pawson up for others. That's how I come to buy him. So in a roundabout way, I bought him with his money. And then my uncle, my mother's brother, we took on to look after him and look after Henry. But as it happened, Henry died first. But Uncle George still left the house which my granny bought in 1922. She bought 2 houses for 150 quid, I think. One of them was left for Henry's, roof over Henry's head. Uncle still left it to us. But in the meanwhile, my wife had had open heart surgery. She only lasted 10 months, did Jane? And something went wrong. I didn't want a post-mortem. I'd seen too much in post-mortem world. I didn't want to bury him in loads of plastic bags. Coroner's officer managed to accept the doctor's certificate. He said he would accept it without a post-mortem, so I fell for that and took that.